This week's episode is with Rachel Miles, and there's some really, really great stuff in this one. So you'll get to hear how Rachel has used growth mindset and reframing as techniques to help herself with the fear of flying, and also partners training, which I particularly loved. And there's also a really interesting link to perimenopause as well. So sounds interesting to you. I promise you, you'll get some really nice tips from this. So hope you enjoy this. So welcome this week's episode of the podcast. We welcome Rachel. Hello, Rachel.
Hi.
That all sounds very official after we've just been chatting for a minute. Rachel, tell us, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, where you're from, that sort of stuff.
Okay, so I'm Rachel. I live in the Wirral in Merseyside in the northwest of England. And I used to love flying, to be honest. And it was one of the great parts of going on holiday for me. But about 10 years ago, that started to change. I mean, we can talk about the reasons why I think that changed. But it started to get really uncomfortable. I always found myself in a heightened state of alert during the flight. And when you're doing long distance, that is really exhausting to be for like 8 hours at a time. And instead of getting better with each flight, it got worse, basically. And the last time we flew before COVID, and it was to America, it was the worst flight yet. And every part of the flight I couldn't handle. I panicked. I wear a Garmin because I run, and my Garmin alarm was going off and beeping at me, telling me my heart rate was too high.
Yeah.
It was awful. And the first 3 days of that holiday, which was supposed to be a really magical holiday in Orlando, I had a stress headache for. So the 3 days were written off. So after that, I didn't want to fly. We had a trip to New York coming up in February, and I cancelled it and lost the money on it because there was no point in getting on that plane for a 3-day flight, 3-day holiday, and I was going to be out of it for 3 days. So that's when I hit a really low point with flying, I think. And then we had COVID, and obviously the chance to try and get over that was taken away.
Thank you. That's a really nice sort of like potted history of like where we are. Okay, so let's start then. So prior to 10 years ago, you were okay with flying?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was part of going on holiday. I even loved the plain food, the little compartmentalized trays, and I just loved everything about it and really didn't have an issue with it. And then all that changed. And I think at the time, I put the blame on, do you remember the Shore and Air Show disaster? That was years ago.
Yeah.
I used to live in Sussex. I didn't at the time, but I'd driven that way many times for work. I also knew people that had lost people that they know during that disaster. And that kind of hit me hard. And from that point, if I heard a plane in the sky, I'd panic and think it was coming out the sky, which I know sounds really crazy. And I wasn't on a plane or anything else. But at the time, that's what I blamed it on.
Yeah.
With the benefit of hindsight, I can now look back and see that at that time, there was also a lot of other things going on. There was a lot of other anxieties I'd never had before coming out. And I now know that all of that was down to perimenopause, which I don't know whether that gets banded around in these discussions. But back then, it wasn't something that was spoken about.
No.
It certainly wasn't something that was spoken about to a woman in her 30s. So the blame for me was from that. A plane had come out of the sky somewhere I used to live, and that was why I didn't want to fly. And I kind of carried that forward with me for many years.
It's interesting. Yeah, there've been a couple of people that have, you've mentioned that before, and I mean, it makes sense, really, doesn't it? But I guess if your body's doing all sorts of weird stuff, and you can't rationalize it out, can you? And so that's really interesting. Okay, so where should we go with this? I'm kind of curious how you work that out, but also I think people like to know, like, practically what you've done, because obviously you've gone from a place of flying, then not. You've had this. You've got a couple of horrible flights, Garmin overload. I don't know if that's. I think it's quite helpful, but then what if it's not? And my partner has one of those, and they go, "Oh look, I've had a full night's sleep, or my body battery's low today." And you think, I don't know if I'd want to know, but I think it can be quite helpful, I guess, if you're looking after yourself. But anyway, I don't know where I'm going with this, but so how did you start to sort of deal with it? What was your sort of process from start?
Okay, so we had COVID, didn't we? And we couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't,
Mm.
right? So that was fine. I didn't need to book a holiday and I wasn't bothered. Um, a couple of years after that, I started to get a diagnosis for what was actually going on with my body. And the more I found out about that, the more all these little irrational fears, I know we shouldn't use that word, but to me they were because I'd never been scared of them before. And it was starting to shine a light on them, but it didn't get rid of them. They were still there, but I knew why they were there. So when we could start flying again, I thought, right, we'll book some more holidays, but we'll try and go shorter distances. So we went to a few places in Europe. But the same thing happens every time. I couldn't relax on the flight. I couldn't relax when I got to the airport, to be fair. It all started from there.
So just to be clear then, Rich, so even though at one level you kind of were understanding what your body was, so you could rationalize it, it wasn't enough to reverse the fear thing then.
No, because that fear was there. And I didn't know how to undo it. I didn't think it could be undone. So I just kept telling myself, look, you've got to man up, really. You've got to get on the plane. People do this every day.
Yeah.
Why? Every day. They're fine. Why can't I do that? And I thought that maybe with practice that would come. But it didn't, even on the shorter flights. And I had my list of why I want to do this. Like, I want to go on holiday. I want to see the world. I want to enjoy the whole process. I promised my child I'd show them the world and taken places. But I also didn't want my fears to rub off on him. And I think we were getting to the point where that was starting to happen. Because
Just to pause for a second, that's really interesting because that's a very sort of goal driven approach, isn't it? Like, this is why I'm doing it. I love that. That's really important as well. I know I've banged on about this before, but it's really helpful to have a thing to go towards and a thing that you don't want to happen as well, which is like, not, I don't want to pass it on to your kids, and also there's a reason why you want to do it. This is good stuff, Rachel. Keep going. Sorry, I'm just sort of highlighting bits as you say it because it's helpful for people.
Yeah, but those goals weren't enough. Slight problem. That couldn't get me past it. So we were going to Turkey this year. We've been there before. It's a great holiday. We all love it. And I booked it knowing I'm going to hate traveling there. I'm going to hate traveling home.
They did it anyway.
Okay. Yes. But this year I thought I'm going to try something different. I didn't think I'd find anything that would work, but I was going to try something. So on Facebook, I'd seen obviously the Lovefly Facebook page and I'd followed it. And I'd seen a couple of posts and I'd read about people who had fear.
You were a lurker, were you?
I was a lurker. I'm looking for it, I reckon. I read the odd posts and think, how are these people doing that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had Spotify on my phone. I realised that I had the podcast on. And I think it was about 2 weeks before the holiday, I thought, I'm going to start listening to these. So when I'm out running, out cleaning the house or whatever, I had the podcast on in the background. And I must admit, I thought, it's not going to work. Someone talking at me isn't going to get rid of this because it was so bad. But very early on in that podcast, I picked up on something really important, which was I wasn't born scared of flying. It was something I'd learned and I had the potential to unlearn it. And that for me...
You're talking episode 1, that is, isn't it?
It is, but I needed to hear it in a couple of episodes just to put it in. Drop my earphone. But that was a light bulb moment for me because I found something I could anchor it to, if that makes sense. I'll explain that. Basically, I realised that learning to fly without fear was a bit like running a marathon, but in a good way. So if I can just backtrack a little. A couple of years ago in work, I was on a leadership course and we did a session on growth mindset. So I took it all in and during my lunch break, I checked my emails And I'd entered the London Marathon ballot for a bit of a giggle. I couldn't run that far. I had the rejection email, and I thought, oh, that's okay. I can't run a marathon anyway. And then all the training kicked in my head, and I was like, hang on a minute. I can't run a marathon yet. If I adopt
Nice.
mindset, I can find the tools to do it.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I went away. I devised a training plan. I got the knowledge I needed, ate right, everything else, and I ran a marathon. I did something I thought I couldn't.
Amazing.
So the beginning of your podcast, I found something that it wasn't my reason why I wanted to do it. It was like an anchor to say, hang on a minute, I've been in this situation before and I've overcome it. And that was the pinch point for me. From there, I knew I could do this, actually.
Yeah.
So it was a complete change in mindset from that point.
I love because, by the way, so just want to sort of say I really like the marathon analogy because it's perfect, isn't it? Because it's not going to be like a quick fix. It's going to take a bit of effort over time, like running, like running a marathon would. So I really like that. And so you mentioned something about because you try. I think I know I talk about a technique of like you've got resources in other parts of your life. How do you apply that to this, or can you think about timing? But can you remember? Those were really early ones. Can you remember where that came up, or was that a general message you picked up?
I can't remember. It was just
Nor me.
like listening to I'd listen to one and some information would go in, but because there's still a reluctance there, because my brain doesn't think this is going to happen. But the more and more you layer that information on, the more that seed's sown and it's sitting there waiting. And then a light bulb just happens. And I thought, right, we're going to do this. So then I binged for about 10 days, the podcasts, one after the other. And I got so much information out of them about what happens when you're on the plane, what those noises are, what those movements are. Information that I didn't even think I needed, to be honest. But it was all going in, and it was also nice listening to other people's experiences of how they've dealt with things and what they found helpful. So I did all that, and then we flew to Turkey this year, and I can honestly say it was the most enjoyable flight.
Really?
Yeah. So I think for me, handing over control to the pilot was something I wasn't very good at doing, because at home I'm in charge of everything. I'm a bit of a cat.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Husband would agree with that one. So I thought, right, I'm going to have to hand over control the minute we get to the airport. And that is me done. I've done all my bit. I've done the packing. I've got everybody here. Let's just roll with this. So I booked an airport lounge, which is just something I don't normally do, but I thought that might take a little bit more of the stress away, because we can just sit there and relax, watching the planes take off as well in Manchester, which was really good. Yeah, what next? We can talk about the plane ride itself.
Yeah. So a couple of things for me. You said you had a light bulb moment, and I was curious. What was the sort of? Can you link that or make it really obvious why? Because some people wait for that and never get it. So that they might get like a gradual like, well, I'm not sure, and then they get on the fly and go, oh, actually, it's okay. Whereas yours found like something happened, and then you went full on immersion with all the podcasts and stuff.
Yeah. So the light bulb moment was realizing that I'd been in situations before where I thought I couldn't overcome something, and I had, and I'd adopted that growth mindset and found the tools I needed to overcome it. So that made me realize that actually, it's not that I can't ever fly without fear. It's I can't fly without fear yet. And that was the path I was going to take. So that's
Good. Love that. Yeah, good. So when you went through the podcast, you said so get the time frame right. You said like 10 days of binging them. Is that right? Can you remember which ones you went for? You might not remember the numbers, but you might remember sort of
I
what was.
basically started at 1 and just rattled through it. I made sure I listened to the turbulence one. Is that number 21, possibly?
Yes.
20
No idea.
to mind, and there's a 40 something as well. Just because other people had commented those numbers quite a few times on the Facebook page and said they were quite helpful. So I made sure I listened to them. But it was literally one after the other. And I really enjoyed the pilot's perspective as well. Those ones were really, really good. Listening to things from their point of view, and they're just like, oh, it's just another day at the office. And the more I heard that, the more I realised actually it's true. It is just another day at the office for them.
Yeah, interesting. So, how far did you get into them? Or have you stopped listening now? Are you free of them? Are we out of your life?
You're not out of my life now because this flight was great. I made some changes.
Oh, we're going to get into that. We'll go into that flight. Let's put a marker in that. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So you did that flight to Turkey, and
Yeah.
so tell us. So I like that thing you said at the airport. You handed over control to other people. Can you tell us more about what other sort of changes you did? How you approached it?
Yeah, so obviously the lounge was to relax me a little bit more, and
Mm.
it has a view of the airfield, so I could watch the planes take off one after the other, watch them all stay in the sky and carry on the way. So we did that, and then when we got on the plane, I made sure that I looked out the window, which is something I don't normally do because I'm scared of heights. But obviously, I'd listened on the podcast to your senses being a bit disillusioned by what's
Mm.
because you can't see. And so the window was open. One of the big changes I made was training my husband.
Brilliant.
Every time we take off, he'd reach for my hand. Are you okay? Are you okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Hand her over me. And I thought, I'm not having that this time because he does that because he knows I'm scared. And this time, I don't want to be scared.
Mm.
Battered his hand off. So like, no, keep your hands to yourself. We are doing this mildly this time. And every time he like looked at me as if to say, "Are you okay?" I'd be like, "No, zip it, no."
Don't give me that look. Brilliant.
We're just gonna pretend everything is great. And do you know what? It really was great. We took off. I could. I, I was able to label all those noises, all those motions. So like after you get in the sky and it feels like you're falling slightly, I knew it wasn't. I knew everything was fine. I knew
Mm.
stupid noise. And I reframed everything as well. So like while I was getting on the plane, that wasn't fear anymore. That was excitement because we're going on holiday and I know I'm going to have a great time. And then in the sky, that dippy thing that always used to push me over the edge, we're not falling out of the sky. That's everything changing around us. That's the pilot's doing a cracking job of flying the plane. And it's a bit like a roller coaster, which is a bit fun. So let's go with that. And like when we got some turbulence, it was like it's not bumpy, it's not dangerous. It's actually quite fun again because it's like going over a cobbled road or being on train. That's quite bumpy. Everything was reframed. I must have sat there with a smile on my face the whole time. But
So just sort of chat. I love this, Rachel. So I mean, I like the reframing technique as well, but for those who've, sometimes people like overuse it, but what you're doing is literally taking what you're looking at and then going, well, if I looked at this in a different way, how might it look? And that's what you're doing. So I get the sense that you're doing this sort of actively during the flight, or is this before the flight? I mean, so yeah, I must also wonder what you did before that, because obviously you're working and smiling and saying, "Don't you look at me that way." No hands. Um, but what did you do before in terms, you listened to the podcast, but was there anything else that you doing any other strategies that people can borrow?
I don't think there was for me. I think I just got myself in the mindset that I'm going to get on that plane as a person who's not scared of flying. And that was my aim to do it. And all those techniques I'd picked up through the podcast. So
Mm.
mentioned reframing. Someone had mentioned changing habits or something. I think somebody used to have a few drinks before they went on the plane, and he said no, that was a bad idea because that was a habit he got into. So that was where the whole hand holding thing came in. We used to do that, but we don't do it anymore. And that just made for a great flight. And there was one point on that flight where we were cruising along, and I sat there genuinely happy, and I turned around to my husband and I went, "This is great." And he was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah." And I said, this is now my anchor. This is my moment.
Yeah.
So when we get ready to fly home, I'm gonna remember this where I'm in the air, flying with a smile on my face, thinking, "Oh, life is brilliant." And that's what I did. I kept hold of that moment.
Brilliant. I love that. So how did you, because I like the idea of the anchors thing. Unfortunately, it's got a little bit cliched um, for some people, but a lot of sports people use it, don't they? It's just sort of like, how do I recreate that feeling of being good, get myself in the right mindset? So I think if it's good enough for sports psychology, it's good enough for us. Let's nick it. But how did you do it in the moment? Like how did you sort of lock in that? Oh, I can't believe I said that phrase. How did you sort of make sure you kept hold of the anchor for the later flight?
Um, remembering going back to that moment, to be honest, remembering that and remembering my anchor, which was I've gotten over things like this before and I can do this again. That one good point on that flight, I think was strong enough to make me start pushing to the back of my mind all the bad stuff from all the others.
Yeah.
There was hope. That was hope. I could actually do this.
Mm.
So that was what I clung on to.
I love that. So I want to get to what you did next, because I think that I get a sense, as I said, you're not like a completed article yet, if that's the right word. You've done this. There's some other things that you've been working on, but I just want to jump back to so you made a link to the perimenopause, and obviously after perimenopause comes menopause and all the rest of it. So if your body is all over the place, how have you managed to sort of do what you've done? He says in a really clumsy, clunky
Yeah,
way.
I get what you're saying, and it's kind of deal with one thing at a time because it wasn't one thing that hit me at one time. There was a lot of different things, and it was a while before I understood what all those different things were. It was a case of breaking it down into manageable chunks, if you like, and dealing with one problem at a time. And flying was a problem, and probably one of the few problems I had left because it's not something you can practice on a regular basis, is it?
No.
Go on holiday like multiple times a year. Well, I don't. We do it like once, twice a year tops.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not something you can get over that way. So it's a harder problem to overcome. But I got to it and I focused all my energy on that. And it is still a work in progress. Just because I've done it once, I'm not going to be complacent and think that's it now. I'm still going to follow the podcasts because I think they're quite interesting anyway. There's always something new that comes out from speaking to other people. When we got home, funnily enough.
Okay, pause that one, Rachel. What was the return flight like? Because you see, we were on our way to Turkey. You've had, I don't know how long you're out there for. We want to, let's just, you've landed, right? And you've had a different experience. Any headaches, any sort of like, nothing like that? Were you able to actually enjoy your holiday?
Yeah, from the seconds we stepped off the plane, I was in holiday mode and I haven't.
And no dread about flying back or anything?
No, I mean, my stomach give me a little bit of a wobble every now and again. And I just remind myself that they're just butterflies. We're going home. I'm excited to see the dogs and the cats. I just reframe it again and use it like that. On the flight home, we did have a bit more turbulence. Probably years ago, I'd have called that severe turbulence. Now it wasn't severe turbulence at all.
Yeah.
It's like a few bumps. But I was fine. I smiled all the way through it and it was great.
Love that. So whatever you did for the way out was enough prep for the way back as well. Because some people can beat themselves up and they do the flight out and the way back they don't feel quite as good, and which I've put down to a number of factors. The same way as I've said this before, so I'm sorry to repeat it, but a lot of complaints come in on return flights. And I don't have any academic research on that. I just know somebody worked in customer services and they said that they get a lot of complaints on return flights. And I've always thought, well, people are knackered. It's the end of the holiday, and it's generally a night flight if you're coming back to the UK. So all of these things can sort of like exacerbate whatever's going on. But you're all right.
Yeah, I didn't think I would be though, to be fair, because going home's a little bit different, isn't it? It's not the excitement of going out there. And like you said, you are tired. It's about 10 days of fun. But I didn't think it'd be okay. And it was because I just remembered back to the flight out there and how good it was. And I think I had a couple of wobbles on the runway because when we were at Dallerman Airport, there was some fighter jets taking off from the airport for some reason.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, they shouldn't be here. Why are they here? I was like, no, if they shouldn't be here, they wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fine. Let's just get past this. And I did, and it was okay. But I enjoyed the actual flight itself. The takeoff, I enjoyed. The landing, that was great. But I know it's a year till our next one.
Okay, so what was your partner's reaction to the new version of you, or maybe back to the old version of you? I don't know which it was.
Yeah, so he's obviously over the moon that I am better to fly with now, because I was a nightmare before. He was the one that had to put up with me with my instant like panicking and stuff.
Yeah.
But it turns out that he's actually scared of flying. He never told me, and he doesn't.
Geeky sod.
But he doesn't like the takeoff and landing. So I have said to him, there's going to be no hand holding this.
So the hand. Now we get more of an understanding around the hand holding. Oh, right. I mean, sometimes people can rise above their own fears by helping others, and maybe that sort of he thought by helping you that was interesting.
Yeah.
So are they working on their fear now?
He'll just put it to the back of his mind until next time we fly. But I booked another holiday when we got back, to Turkey, because I thought we'll go and do that again. It was a really great time. I obviously enjoyed the flights. So I booked the same holiday with the same airline, feeling in my safe zone. And a couple of weeks ago, I got an email from TUI to say, we're not doing that flight now. We're passing you over to Sun Express.
Right. Excellent. Good experiment for you, yeah.
There was about half an hour or half.
Reframe that bad boy. Go on then.
I was like, I can't do this. I've only ever flown mostly with TUI, and it needs to be with TUI. And then I sat there and thought about it a bit more, and I went back to the podcasts, and I thought, no, we are being a little bit silly now. All of them fly to the same safety measures. All the planes have to go through the same safety checks. And actually, I think people had queried Sun Express within the Facebook group before, and so many people have come back with like, oh, they're amazing, they're great. I thought, no, we're going to do this. So I have changed the holiday to Sun Express. I've even extended it a little bit, and we're already flying with them. So I think that's the next step for me, which podcasts are still going to come in handy, because I'm going backing up to trusting another airline, which sounds really, really silly. But yeah, that's going to be a bit weird for me, because I've only ever flown with TUI or Virgin, and they're my safe space. So this is a step out that comfort zone again.
Oh, that's great. I mean, some people have that kind of, association with good flight, and then that's fine from a customer care point of view. But yes, it is kind of like, it sounds like you're healthily challenging that from a safety point of view as well, which is good. So where are you up to in terms of podcasts and stuff?
I can't remember.
So are you a sequential, like in order type human, or do you just jump about? What do you tend to do?
I try to go through them in order, but every now and again I'll see you post one on a Facebook group and I'll think, oh, that sounds interesting. So I'll jump into that one.
Yeah.
So I am a little bit all over the place. But I'm hoping to catch up at some point. So I'll have listened to all the historic ones, and then I'll be able to like listen to them as and when they come out new.
Yeah, there's a lot of them now, aren't there? It's like nearly 250, which is just, gosh, amazing. Really, all those people have given their time there. Fantastic. So anything else that you're doing around this? Because the reason I ask this is because you've got quite a good mindset around this, and I'm wondering, with the big gaps between it, how you're keeping yourself sort of on track, really.
So I guess obviously the podcasts will keep me on track. I'm also running next year's London Marathon. So that whole growth mindset thing after not running for so long is coming back into play, and I do that in April. So by the time I've done that and got my medal, it won't be long until we fly to Turkey, and then I can remind myself, actually, didn't think I could do that again, but I did. So we're going to do this now. Yeah. Kind of like a cycle of aiming for things. I think that's something that's good to keep constant, because it keeps your brain working in that way. So you'll always be heading towards progress.
Yeah, I love that. So I was curious at the beginning of the podcast, you mentioned that you'd come across the growth mindset on a leadership course.
Yeah.
And then I've got a sense of, okay, so this, you're a professional person, and I wonder if there's anything else, any other links. So you've made the one from the growth mindset. You've also made the link to the marathon. I wonder if as we're reflecting on this now, what other things have you've made links to that we could blatantly nick?
Um, Gosh, I don't know. I think they're the obvious ones.
Mm.
There's also a link to those hundreds and thousands of people who fly every day without a problem. Um, and they do it so well. So I want to be like them, and I think I'm getting there. I really am.
Yeah. So your aspiration is to be what? Because it sounds like you had a good flight and you were okay with it. When you imagine yourself as the best version of yourself, what is that like?
The holiday experience starts when you get to the airport. That's when all the excitement and everything should kick in. That's when control gets passed over, and I'm just there for the ride then, and I enjoy it from there on in. That is the ideal. And getting on a plane should be no different to getting on any other form of transport, which I
Yeah.
do with no problem. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is also interesting that you don't have it in other aspects. It's attached itself to the flying, And so anything else around, as we've had a few people who've talked about perimenopause and menopause and stuff, is there anything that you found that's helped with that? Because, so I think, and the reason I'm asking that is from a position of ignorance and thinking like, if you're working on sort of the fear of flying stuff, and then you're at your others, your mindset and what your body's doing and all the rest of it, are there things that you've sort of found that have helped? So you're kind of working in parallel, really, aren't you?
Yeah, that in itself is a minefield, and there's so much information out there, but then there's so much they don't really know yet as well. So for anyone in that situation, and do your research. There is lots of information out there. There's lots of support groups online where you'll find people who've had similar experiences. I'm not the only one who's become scared of flying through that. Many stories I've read all have a similar thing. And scared of driving as well, which is another problem that I had, but that was slightly easier to overcome because you can practice that and do it on a regular basis, where flying's a bit different. Yeah, just talk to people. The more people you talk to, the more you'll get a sense of there's a lot of people that share your worries and
Yep.
problems that you're going through. So yeah.
It's interesting that it extended to fear of driving as well. How did you get over that?
That was tricky. And again, I blame COVID for that one because obviously we couldn't go anywhere. And I used to love driving. I love my car. But I couldn't do it anymore. I kind of lacked confidence. And that was a case of getting behind the wheel, going out more regularly, just practicing. And I changed my car as well to go a different seating position, so I was higher up on the road, and that's helped. But that was awful. That was.
Mm. Yeah, because we've had people with that, on the podcast, as you know, they can't drive or they can only drive with certain rules. They can't go on motorways. They can't go under bridges or over bridges or, and that's completely debilitating, isn't it? Having that. I mean, fear of flying, yes, it robs you of choices, but I've said before, you can manage around it, but not being able to drive if you are a driver is quite a nightmare, isn't it? That's quite, that's an everyday type scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. Very good. I love all the mindset stuff and the links to psychology, and I think that's super helpful for people. So if anyone's listening right now and they're thinking, "Oh, yeah, it's all right for you, Rachel. You're not as bad as me," and all the rest of it. What would you say to them as a sort of like to give them hope based on your experience and what you've learned?
I'd say you do need to adopt that growth mindset. The more you sit there and tell yourself you can't do something, like I did, you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So that's the first off. Secondly, you might have your list of why you want to do things, but again, that might not be enough for you. It wasn't enough for me. I couldn't get past the fear with that alone. Find your anchor. Find something you can pull that back to, a situation that you've been through in the past that you thought, I'm not going to be able to overcome this. Done something and got there. Once you identify that, you'll be able to see that you can get through this too. But you might not know how to, and that's fine. Not yet. It is a journey. And thirdly, the whole reframing thing was really, really good to me and really positive. It kept changing those negative emotions and that bad anxiety that was creeping in and turning it into something positive and something. It was believable as well. I wasn't kidding myself. I really was excited because I was going on holiday. I was just trying to push the doubt to the side.
Yeah.
They'd be my 3 biggest tips.
Yeah. I love that. I still think it's brilliant that you're training your partner. Don't look at me. No hands. That's great. And I find that really fascinating that it was that they were masking their own anxiety around fear of. That's really interesting. And you hadn't picked that up.
No, not at all. Because I was really bad compared to him. I would be the one that was sitting there shaking, struggling to breathe, on the verge of tears. Sometimes it was that bad, and I don't know why. Not
Yeah.
sense anyway.
Yeah. And now you're on to him. Do you think he's likely to do anything about it? Do you think it's or will he wait till it gets really bad and then throw lots of effort? That's what a lot of people do. They wait.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, he can get through it, so I think in his head he's doing okay by getting through it. But it'll be interesting on the next flight to see how much of that I actually pick up on. Now I'm more aware of what's going on around me, not trying to close myself off to it.
Yeah. He tries to hold you down and say, no.
Nope, we don't do that anymore.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's an interesting phrase though, isn't it? Like to get through it. A lot of, it's just like I'm the same as you. Your aspirational thing was like, for me, the holiday begins as soon as I get to the airport. I always get there super early. I like to sit around, have a breakfast and watch everyone stressing, sprint to the gate as soon as they call it, like it's going to make any difference. All that sort of, we keep ourselves in an anxious state. So you got to just sort of like try and chill a bit when you get there. And, as long as you're there early, you can do that and it becomes all part of it. I like the idea of the lounge as well. I've done that occasionally. Sometimes I've been lucky enough to get that as part of the package, but it can just give you a little bit of quietness, can't it, around all the craziness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent stuff, Rachel. Thank you very, very much for that. That was really good. Some nice little nuggets in there. Keep going with the podcast, and I'd be interested if you fancy it. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your story. So like maybe if you can be bothered in a year from now, if you fancy coming back and sort of giving us a kind of a part 2, because I think what we've got here is some really great beginnings of stuff, and that you've fundamentally challenged the way you've operated. I think it sounds like there could be more stuff that you might work out.
Yeah.
Because
I'd love to. That'd be great.
All right, thank you, Rachel. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving your time up today, and it's lovely to meet you.
And you.